y'all, this is Rodrigo Arancibia from the High Tech High Graduate School of Education, and I'm here to talk to you about EdSpace, a social learning network. Well, what is EdSpace? EdSpace is a place for you to connect and get curious with the people that you want to connect with. But what EdSpace isn't is a popularity contest like Twitter. It's not a place for you to sit and listen and sit and get like YouTube. EdSpace TV is a personal channel for you to do your own vlogging to tell your story about your experiences. Not comfortable with video yet? It's all good. Every single channel is going to have post-it boards. Write your question down on the post-it board and someone will respond to you with a video post. Social media networks are noisy. That's why we created EdSpace filters. On every single channel, you'll be able to drill down on which educators you want to learn from and which educators you want to get curious with. Whether you're a second grade teacher in Arkansas or a project-based learning teacher in San Diego, use the EdSpace filters to find your people and get curious with them. EdSpace has two types of channels. Public channels that everybody can view and everybody can access, and private channels that only teachers from your school can see. Cool thing is, you can also see which teachers from your school site are signed up for EdSpace. So what's next? Introduce yourself. Pin a video to your personal channel and tell us what you're curious about. Tell us what you're working on. Tell us what you're passionate about. The most important thing is that you get started. Show up and share more.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our next session here on day one, the future of schools, at this Inspired Are You Future Ready online conference. We have with us for this next session, Dr. Helen Maffini, who is a leading authority in the field of mindfulness and also the founder and CEO of MindBee Education. MindBee helps schools to bring social emotional learning and mindfulness to classrooms so that children can thrive. And Helen will be speaking on the subject of the compassionate classroom, how to lead a new generation of kids with empathy and kindness to conquer the world's biggest problems. Helen has a great degree of experience and expertise in working to improve the lives of children, especially through teachers, parents, as well as heart-based business owners. A former school principal and teacher, she is also a certified emotional intelligence coach and a positive psychology coach, and recently completed her doctorate in education in international educational research and mindfulness in preschools.
Welcome, Helen. It's wonderful to have you here with us at the Inspired Conference, and our audience will definitely learn so much about mindfulness and emotional intelligence and all the insight that you've gathered over the years. So we are really, really so privileged to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Elmarie. I'm so excited to be here and be part of this really forward-thinking conference, sharing so many ideas about how we can help different industries and different people into the future. So thank you again for inviting me.
And even though this is, thank you, Helen, and even though this is on day one of the conference where we are looking at the future of schools, as you quite rightly said, it is important to develop an understanding of what mindfulness is and how it can impact not only on schools to develop caring classrooms like the title of your session, but also that it is relevant for anybody in any industry.
I think we're seeing more and more of it coming into businesses, governments, and all different areas of work and life. There's more and more research coming out showing just how beneficial it is, and I think it's really needed in different places at the moment. So
especially at the moment, Helen, right, with what we're seeing in the world, and seeing almost two opposite forces, a force of selfishness and self-absorbed attitudes and anger and frustration. And then on the other hand, there's also this awareness of the importance of inclusion, of empathy, of compassion. So maybe that's where we can start, Helen, and you could tell us what people confuse the concepts of mindfulness, empathy, and compassion. So maybe you can give us a definition of what these concepts are and how they're the same and how they're different.
Right. Yes, all these words are kind of floating around and buzzwords at the moment. So for me, mindfulness is really about the present moment. So it's about being in the here and now, about noticing, maybe noticing our environment or noticing what's happening in our own body, and just being curious, and doing so with kindness, what we find, not judging ourselves, but just being here. We often get into this autopilot mode and we're off, making our to-do list and thinking of 7,000 things that need to be done right now, or thinking about the past and why didn't I do this and why didn't I say that. So mindfulness for me is really about being here, being now, paying attention to this moment. And I think a lot of people miss that, and it is really, really important. And then empathy and compassion, I think, are more similar. They go along the same track. So empathy is really about, you probably heard the quote, standing in someone else's shoes. So really thinking about another person's perspective. And that's cognitive empathy. And then we have emotional empathy, where we really feel the feelings of other people, and those tend to come together. And then compassion is when we want to take that empathy and do something to help others. And not only help others because we have compassion for others, but we also have self-compassion, which is becoming a lot more of a regular term, and something that we're finding is more and more important is teaching ourselves self-care, and teaching ourselves to be compassionate to ourselves, not always listening to those little voices in our heads that are telling us we're not good enough or we're not doing things in the right way. So I think they all intersect in different ways because we bring in different elements and different activities. But I think they're all really important for everyone, really, not only for children, which I'm passionate about teaching this to children, but I think adults also can really benefit from just thinking more about those three terms.
That's really good to have those that understanding, and it's almost like compassion, as you said, is empathy with action. And then you need to be mindful to be compassionate with yourself. So you need all of those. It's almost like they intersect, and the one can't do without the other.
Exactly.
So that's a great explanation, Helen. So now we know that, and you've spoken about this before, mindfulness is becoming more and more of a, can I say, a hot topic. There's more awareness of it, more people are talking about it, there are more books being written about it, and it's quite important. And you yourself have developed a mindfulness curriculum called the Mind Be curriculum, and we will talk about that a little bit later in this interview. But can you share with us what brought you to this point? What your journey on? I know that you're an educationist, and I mean, we've been working together for so many years. What has brought you to focus on mindfulness specifically?
Yeah. So yes, it has been quite a journey. I think I'm over 25 years working in education right now, and I was always very involved in the early years or lower primary years, and I could really see children struggling when they maybe didn't feel safe in a classroom, where they weren't comfortable, they had some anxiety. So that really was the beginning of piquing my interest into, why aren't these kids learning as well as maybe some of the other kids. So I started learning a lot about emotional intelligence and later on positive psychology, and just learning and bringing in some strategies into school to see if they would help. But then on my personal side, I also have kind of since I've been a small child, I was always a little bit anxious, not overly anxious, but if I had to do a presentation, I would get all worked up, or sometimes I might pretend I was sick so I didn't have to do it. I would, experience these little bouts of anxiety, I would say, more than my friends growing up. So I was really aware and felt for those students who I could see were in a similar kind of situation. And then, so doing my work and continuing, and I had the opportunity to attend a session with Deepak Chopra when I lived in Bahrain. And that was my first real exposure to meditation. And I thought, oh, like, this is really interesting, and I started to bring in these small moments of meditation into my life, and brought in some practices. I always tend to go on the research and reading side, but you actually have to do it and practice to make it work. You can't just read about it and become mindful. So through that, I really noticed a difference in myself and my ability just to come back to the present, not be worrying about the past or the future, or something that happened in the past. I tend to be very future oriented, always planning the next thing and doing the next thing, as you will know. And this process really helped to really bring me to the present moment. And with everything I do in education, I love learning about my own personal development and conferences and different things. And I always try to think, how can we bring that to children? How can this work with young kids? Find something when you're 30 or 40 and you're like, wow, this is so good. Like, why didn't I learn this when I was 8? I think that that's kind of my thought pattern. So I would always be going to these conferences, learning new techniques, taking certifications, and then I would be thinking, how will this work with a young child? How can we take this same concept but bring it down to children in the younger years? And with mindfulness, what I found is there was a lot of research coming out in clinical studies, which are really not very like schools, right? A clinical study is very different. And then lots of information coming out about adults and the benefits of for adults and for teenagers. So there wasn't much at that point with younger children, especially not with preschool children, but I was really captured by this idea of how we could help young children, or would this work in an early years conference. So I just started reading, learning more and more, and eventually I found there was really very, very little about the early years and mindfulness. That's changed in the last couple of years. But so I decided to create my own research and my own plan to look further into that and see how it could help children.
Well, that's great. And I have to say, Helen, having known you for the past, gosh, let's not reveal how many years, I think that's the thing I admire about you. You are always self-developing. You're always attending these conferences, always skilling yourself up, because that is so important. I think to have that breadth and depth of not just focusing on one direction, but taking in a very holistic look at learning and at wellness and at health, that all adds up to a deeper understanding. Now, looking at that, and you've alluded to this slightly, but neuroscience and the development in the field what is the link or the science, neuroscience that supports mindfulness, and especially in young children? Could you, I know that you have all these interviews with people and you have a summit coming up, so
Yeah.
please share with us a little bit more about neuroscience and mindfulness.
Yeah. Well, it's really fascinating. I have to say I'm a bit obsessed with this topic. So when we look at, there's much more research with adults and adults, but with the technology like MRIs and fMRI scans, researchers have been able to really see changes happening in the brain after practicing mindfulness, which is really amazing, right? And it's not for long periods of time either. So people have found, long-term meditators, maybe monks or people that are very serious meditators, have greater changes in their brains. But even people who have just done a 8-week course where they attend maybe twice a week for 2 hours, have had changes in their brain. So the amygdala has been found to shrink when this short period of mindfulness meditation has taken place. And that part of the brain, as you know, is where fear and stress and anxiety reside. So that actually shrinks. And then 4 other areas of the brain actually grow. And I'll just tell you about one part, the left hippocampus, which is where a lot of our learning takes place, but also where our self-awareness and our emotional regulation take place. And so that grows. So for me, it's amazing, like that can happen just in a 8-week period or a 6-week period. So there's lots and lots of research going on, especially, people who have had trauma in their life, people that are in difficult experiences. So seeing how it works with different parts of the population. Now with children, there really is limited research and that kind of brain examination research going on, but what we've found is that children can show through drawings or through their language, which is described by a teacher, what they're experiencing during these mindfulness interventions. And that's given us very good clues into what children are thinking and what children are absorbing from the process. But we know in the early years, brain development is so important. So many neural pathways are built, so many things are happening. And it's always surprising to me that teachers don't really learn a lot about the brain before they start teaching. That it's not, in most teacher training schools, not like a big part of the learning, because it is amazing. And I think there's even studies showing when people actually know how their brain works, they are then able to learn better. So just from knowing that, what the brain is doing. So it just seems that we should be teaching this in schools for sure. But yeah, it's a really exciting area. Lots of new research coming out showing different benefits and things through testing children and through parent and teacher surveys and talking to the kids themselves. So I think in the next 5 years, we'll have a burst of early childhood neuroscience work in this area.
That's so exciting. I mean, and also why I focused on our ThinkWise, looking at thinking skills in the early years, and we've always been collaborating and discussing this. And as you say, why don't they include this in teacher curriculums, teacher training curriculums? I attended a training, I think it was by Professor David Sousa, I can't remember. We go to all these many trainings, and he asks that question. If your car breaks down, or if you have a question about your car, you'll ask a mechanic. Or if you have a problem with your heart, you'll ask a cardiovascular surgeon. Or if you have a problem with your teeth, you'll go to a dentist. But if you want to know about how the brain learns, are you going to ask a teacher? No. But
Yeah.
Teachers work with, they are shaping children's brains on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So that is, I think we really need to start a movement, Helen, to try and
Yeah,
promote this.
I totally agree. And there, you see so many. I mean, I love the thinking skills, the Think Wise program, because I like that brings in so many elements, the curiosity and the wondering and the awe, which is all wonderful in early childhood. But on the other hand, we see a lot of, I would say, like behavior strategies that are just harmful actually
Yes.
for young children.
Mm.
We see things like, a mindful moment is actually like go sit in the chair by yourself over there and be
Yeah.
quiet, which really is not the
No.
intention
Yeah.
of this practice. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done there for sure.
So Helen, tell me, I mean, we've been speaking about this, but is there an age, the right age to start working on mindfulness? So some people might say, oh, my child's too young to start doing this. Are children naturally born with this ability, or is it something that
Yeah.
is acquired?
Yeah, so I believe that some children are born with all kinds of dispositions, and some children have a mindful disposition just from when they're born, and other children may have a less mindful disposition or less empathetic disposition. But I believe that, and I think the research shows when in early childhood we can kind of promote and develop those dispositions in children, they tend to flourish when they have the actual ability to be taught and to learn strategies of how to do that. But children, if you think about children, they're very present, right? They can get absorbed in their play. You can't drag them away when they're making a castle or they're in their fantasy world. If they see a puddle, they just want to jump in it and be in the moment, right? Whereas we're thinking, it's going to get all dirty, and so really they are mindful. In the general sense of the world, they're very curious. They ask lots of questions. They want to explore things, and they don't have a lot of judgment around that as well. So, yeah, so I think they can be taught really, from when they're young babies until they're, definitely toddlers. I've seen lots and lots of work happening with toddlers, and then it's more about encouraging that natural mindfulness, but then also giving them some other bespoke activities that maybe they wouldn't have thought of, like how to use your breath to calm yourself down, or developing their emotional literacy through reading stories that tie in, or maybe using a persona puppet to explain difficult situations like COVID, and how this puppet might be feeling, and letting them kind of relate to that. So there's all kinds of ways that we can also enhance the natural mindfulness that young children have.
So it's making sometimes, I mean, they have the natural inclination, and as you say, some more, some less, but making this more discreet and actually teaching them strategies that
Yeah,
will help, right? Because you can't imagine
yeah,
this would just happen by itself, So
no,
that's what your
exactly.
curriculum is about, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, so it's having that awareness for children of what's available, and building up, I like to say, building up this toolbox throughout the years that they can then take with them to help them ride the ups and downs of life. That's not going away. Things are going to be up and down, and good things will happen and bad things will happen, but it's teaching children you always have resources and resilience and tools that you can draw out to help you through those situations. So
That's fantastic. And just before we talk a little bit more about your approach to teaching mindfulness, what about adults? I mean, can they learn? Are you ever too old to learn this? And would you say that it's the same as yoga, or is it different? What would be
yeah.
the relationship, and how does it impact on adult stress?
Yeah. So yeah, for adults definitely can learn mindfulness, and I've seen 96-year-olds, 100-year-olds learning mindfulness. So that's definitely possible, and I think that's wonderful. It gives us hope. Our brains can change and learn even well into our 90s and past. So I think it's the thing is a lot of adults haven't been exposed to it, and then so that maybe they're a bit nervous or scared to try it out, or they tried to do this meditation once and they were like, it doesn't work, like my brain just goes all over the place, and then they give up. But really, it is a wonderful practice, and it's changed many adults' lives for the better, because it gives you a pause. So when there's something going on, some stimulus, something that you're agitated by, or and before you react, maybe in a way that wouldn't not be the best way, you have this little pause where you just take a breath, and it just comes. It's not like you practice doing that, but when you start to practice mindfulness, which can be done in many different ways. So a lot of people think it's just sitting on a cushion for 40 minutes and meditating, and that's not it at all. That could be something if you enjoy that, but there's lots of other ways to incorporate mindfulness into your day through movement. So yoga is kind of like a mindful movement. There's a lot of overlaps between yoga and meditation and mindfulness. So, but yeah, I would say it's more like bringing in the breath and then the movement into the yoga practices. But mindful walking, mindful eating. You can even be mindful brushing your teeth or washing the dishes. So it's about being present. Sometimes we're washing the dishes and you're not even noticing you're washing the dishes. You're already thinking, tomorrow I need to do this, and you're never really there. And people are distracted and they're not present with their kids. And that's also causing some of the issues in society. They're always on their phones or thinking about something, and the lines of work and home are blurred quite a lot nowadays. So we really have to put those boundaries on our time and on what we're willing to do on a daily basis, I think, to make sure that we have that time for our own self-care, for our own mindfulness practice, which in turn refreshes us and makes us more able to go on and do the things that we want to do, instead of thinking, I'm too tired, I can't do it. So it really is a practice. I think if you try, just start small, 5 minutes a day. If you're not having a practice, do a few of the, I think I'm going to tell you soon, a few small things that you can do, and you can try those out and then build from there and see what works for you, see what you feel comfortable with.
That's practical advice, I think, that we can all really benefit from. And if you are more mindful about the things you do during the day, you will stop wasting time. I mean, I think
Yeah.
time just disappears. You go on Facebook and you scroll through things, and when you look again, it's an hour later. I
Yeah.
think if you're more mindful, everybody tells you, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough time. And like if you absorb really are mindful about what you do in the day, you will have much more time, and you would also appreciate being alive, and really be able to recognize those emotions in yourself.
Yeah.
So can you give us, you alluded to some strategies or some
Yeah.
tips. Maybe you can
Yeah.
talk the audience through a few of these that they can actually
Sure.
do now with us in the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. So I'll show you a few easy things that you can do with your kids, and then I'll give you a couple that you can do for yourself. So I've got a few little props with me. So this is a Hoberman Sphere, which is a really cheap little toy that you can pretty much order from anywhere. And this is a great way to introduce breathing practices to your children. They love this toy because it's I think with kids we always want to have some kind of physical thing or something they can touch so that they can, breath is quite an abstract concept for especially young children. So we can use this to show kids, when we want to practice our breathing, we can take a big breath and breathe out. And then in. And this is a great thing. Kids love this. If you're in a classroom and you can put a pile of them in your calm corner or somewhere else, kids will go and they will practice their breathing. And I always am like, oh, when I see the children doing it, because they learn that they can regulate their nervous system and their emotions by using their breath. And with this type of activity, they can breathe at their own pace because our lungs are different sizes. So that's something important to keep in mind.
That was great. Just
So
observing you
another
doing that,
fun,
Helen, was like, it's, as you say, it's more, it takes the abstract, it makes it more concrete. I found
yeah,
myself just looking at you doing that it helped me to, regulate my own breath. So it's not just something
yeah,
for kids. I mean, it's
yeah,
very useful, fantastic.
yeah. And I think teachers, when they're doing this in class with their student, they're also practicing this, and it's
Mm.
really beneficial to co-learn together. So here's another one. So this is my glass of hot chocolate. So, you can tell the children we have hot chocolate, or if you can actually do it with real hot chocolate, even better. So, but this is just a pretend one. So what do we do when we have hot chocolate? We want to breathe in and smell the hot chocolate, and then breathe out and cool it off. So we're going to breathe it in again. Hot chocolate. And then
Oh, that's
breathe out to
great.
cool it off. So there's so many of these activities that you can do to practice breathing with young children. Another one I like is 5-finger breathing. So this is really good because kids can do it anywhere because they have their hand with them. And it's just, tracing your hand, which stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, but also bringing in the breath. So breathing in and out, and in and out, and in and out, and in and out, and in and out.
Oh,
So
that's
kids
fantastic.
love that. It's a simple, and these are 1-minute things, right? 1 minute. So I know teachers sometimes feel overwhelmed and how do I fit all this into my day? But there's so many things that you can do. And show you this one, last one. So using a snow globe, or you can make a glitter jar, just get a glass jar filled with glitter and glue, and then just shaking it up, and then just explaining to the children, like, sometimes our minds get all shaken up like this, and we have all these thoughts running in our mind, and we don't know which ones to listen to. But if we can just be quiet and still, we can watch all the thoughts come down, and then we can carefully pick which one we want to choose to actually take action on. So these kind of visual things are great. I'll just show you this book, which is one of my favorite books by my friend Chris Willard, which is alphabet books. And really they have, kids love making up their own breaths, and they're very good at it. So he has, the alligator breath and the butterfly breath, and all different ways for kids to go through the alphabet and practice their breathing and make their own breathing games up. So yeah, those are just a few things. Other things like bringing, just going in nature, lying down and looking at the clouds is a very mindful activity, seeing what you see in there. Now for adults, what I would recommend is thinking about your self-compassion and your self-care. A lot of adults, especially parents who are working, they miss out the self-care and the self-compassion. They put everybody else first. And when you say, oh, meditate for 10 minutes, I don't have 10 minutes to meditate, especially I think when kids are younger, right, and need a lot of support. So, but I think we found through research that parents and teachers who do practice self-compassion and self-care really have decreased stress, better feelings of well-being, and they're more able to be present, and they just generally feel better. So some of these sound funny because you might not normally think we would do them, but our brains don't know that if somebody else is doing this to us or we're doing it to ourselves. So little things like just touching your lips, or giving yourself a little hug, rubbing your shoulders, or my favorite one, holding my hand. Can't tell you, I go around holding my hand all the time. These things help our parasympathetic nervous system to calm down. And this happens in seconds. The chemicals change in our bodies, and these are really helpful, just simple tips. If you're feeling agitated, you're feeling like overwhelmed, just take a second to do something like that. And then I think also, if you think about the moments in the day, because a lot of people tell me, like, I want to do it and I know I should do it, but I forget. I just forget to do it. So I create habits. So every time I walk through a door, I stop for a moment, I take a breath, just kind of ground myself back into the present, and then continue walking through. And it's just those kind of moments. I also do it when I'm going to walk up a flight of stairs. I'll try to walk mindfully and just be there and notice what's going on. Taking a walk for me is a huge one. Like I tend to put that off till later, and but just having a short walk in nature can really change your mood and refresh your mind, and bring you back to what's important, and help your health as well at the same time. So that's those are a few simple tips that you can do. I have a mindful toolkit for you that you can download at the end of this, and that has lots of other strategies, little short meditations that you might want to do, and other kind of games and things that you can bring into your daily life just to make it a little bit more mindful and calm.
That's so helpful, Helen. And what I think is really, really important is that you use those golden moments in your day. You have to. You are walking through a door, or if you have stairs in your house, you go up the stairs, or you do wash dishes and you do brush your teeth. So this whole thing of I don't have time is just, I sometimes think people say that. I'm very guilty. I also sometimes would say I don't have enough time, but I think it's because you don't want to go there. You don't want to. It's hard sometimes to say, well, I actually have to stop and reflect and be here, because it can be painful, sometimes, or we just become such creatures of habit that we're just always worrying about the future. And maybe I think now in this COVID time, it's even worse, that people are just the amygdala are so fired up that, their brains are hijacked. So if you can inculcate these habits in your daily life, kids will sense that you are calmer. I think we subconsciously give them this message that we say, do what I tell you to do, but we don't actually model it. I don't know if you've had that experience with children and teachers and adults.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, we often see, teachers are really eager to try new things out, and parents too, and everyone wants the best, but many people want to kind of start with the children, and really we need to start with ourselves. And it's very hard for us to teach mindfulness or teach emotional intelligence if we are not practicing that ourselves. And children are so observant. They really pick up on what we do rather than what we say. And they can read our faces really well. So children can really benefit simply from teachers practicing mindfulness themselves, or parents practicing mindfulness. I've had so many parents and teachers tell me stories, just after a few weeks, where the children say, "But Mom, you're different now," like, or like, before you would have shouted or got mad, and now you're just thinking. So it actually can work really quickly. And because when we embody this, when this is how we are, that just naturally floods into the children's learning, and they pick that up and they model that. So before we have to even bring any strategies to children, these kind of things help us. And for example, it's really great when a teacher also is very authentic and says, like, "Oh dear, like I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, class, right now. So, I'm going to just pause for a moment. I'm going to take a few breaths. Would you all like to help me take a few breaths and do a few deep breathing things together, and say, yeah, okay, I feel a bit better now." So and it's those moments where we're sharing that this happens to all of us, but this is how we manage it, and these are the things that we can do that can really help. There's been studies, about there was one study that really stands out to me, that was in Vancouver, where they actually took children's cortisol. They had to spit in a cup before school, and they measured their cortisol levels, and they correlated them with the teacher's level of burnout. And they found that teachers who, were just on the end of their ropes, burning out, those kids had higher stress hormones and higher levels um, of stressors in their physical body, because you think about, you go into a room and how contagious emotions are. It's the same thing, right? So I think yeah, the more that we can help teachers who have a very stressful job, and to provide these type of programs for their own personal development, and for parents as well to learn these strategies, and the better it's going to be for the children in the end.
Because children, they become what they see, isn't it?
Yeah,
They're not born like this. Yes, of course, we have the nature and nurture debate that's always ongoing, but surely you subconsciously mirror this and transfer these feelings and thoughts to
exactly.
children. And so it's just a logical thing that if teachers have a better understanding of the brain and what happens and how the impact that they have on children and what they can do to just change that environment and that learning through their own behavior, instead of always blaming the children, because it's so
Yeah,
often the first point or the first place that teachers go to. And don't get me wrong, I have the greatest compassion for teachers. And I mean, I was a teacher, but it's easier to say they don't want to learn, or they are not
yeah,
interested, or they're not manageable, but they pick up on your own stress. Now, I'm
yeah.
sure you spoke about research, Helen, and you just recently, congratulations, have been awarded your doctorate and you did your studies on mindfulness. Would you like to share with us a little bit about what you did and what was some of the key learning that
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting topic. So I looked at how a mindfulness intervention would influence the well-being of young children, and I did my research in Hong Kong because I have a long history of working with Hong Kong, and I feel that they have a very high stress level in children, even starting in preschool, due to academic testing and just the structure of the kind of education system. So what I wanted to do was see if a mindfulness intervention would help children with some of these areas. So we had 7 schools involved, and we interviewed hundreds and hundreds of parents and teachers, all the teachers across the 7 schools, did surveys, and then we did interviews with the parents. But one of the interesting parts of my research, I think, was I looked at the children's voice and the children's work. So throughout the intervention, they had journal entries where they would draw, what is mindfulness, or how does my breath help me, or who is kind to me. And that was really beautiful for me to see, just how they could connect to the curriculum and draw out these messages of calm and relaxation, and really get the concepts that were being taught. So what we found after analyzing all these mounds and mounds of data was, we did some classroom interventions as well. So what we found was, definitely children were able to focus more, to pay attention in a better way. They were calmer. Not only were children calmer, but teachers were calmer as well, which was interesting. And children were more relaxed. Parents said that children were sleeping better at night. Um, they were able to kind of self-soothe and to soothe others, so show that compassion to themselves and to others when they got hurt or when things didn't go right. And they really developed a higher level of emotional literacy and emotional regulation during the period of the intervention. And it was only a short intervention of 6 weeks where they had 20-minute lessons 3 times a week plus one longer lesson. And we brought in lots of breath work and mindful movement, mindful eating during snack time, lots of stories around kindness and stillness and what that meant, and then lots of art projects that were linked to it. But there was a lot of work also about being grateful and who are we grateful for at school, and not only just looking at it, but taking actions afterwards. So, one of the things they did was everybody brought a piece of fruit and they made it into this big basket and made a card, and then they gave it to their school bus driver or to the cook in the kitchen who's making their food. And so we tried to keep it very playful and fun, lots of nature-based things like standing like a tree and mindful movement and things like that. But it was very well received, and I think it's really helpful. And the parents wanted to continue it make it into a year-long program. So that's what's happening now in the schools.
This is so useful. Is there a way that people can, are you going to write a book about it, Helen, or is there a way in which you're going to share the information? Because I'm sure lots of people would like to read more about this fascinating study.
Yeah, I'm writing a white paper now, which I'll publish on my website, and then also working on a book about it, but that might be a little bit later. I'll try to get the white paper out in the next few months just to give a kind of overview of the research.
That's fantastic. Oh, well, I'm really excited and I can't wait to see it. So now you spoke about this intervention and making this a longer intervention. How would schools go about it, and how can you help schools if they are interested in implementing a mindfulness curriculum?
Yeah, so I think one of the mistakes schools make is they try to just find a program and plunk it in. And I think, some things work in some schools, some things don't, but maybe the training isn't in there. So how we work is we combine live and online platforms. So we have a online teacher training session. So the first thing that we would do is meet with the kind of senior people in the school who are interested in bringing this in and have a discussion about what that might look like in their school, what's working well, what's not working well. And the first thing we want to do, as we've talked about before, is think about the teacher's own mindfulness practices and how are the teachers maybe we could do a short course to help them research, just a 8-week course. That might be one way. Another thing we might do is look at the environment and see, is it chaotic? Are there ways that we can bring in some peace and calm? Can we create these calm corners, which I love, and little corners in a classroom or in an area of the school, and especially in a teacher's lounge where people can, put on some headphones and listen to nature sounds. Maybe they can touch stones or shells. They can smell a lavender or put a lavender eye mask on, or read some books, or just look at different cards and prompts to help them with their breathing or emotional naming and things. So that's kind of before we get into teaching the kids mindfulness. So we're working on all that in the background, and then we bring in it's a 30-lesson curriculum for our children. And again, teachers can learn alongside the children while they're doing that. And that's a lot of the feedback that we've got is, when we're doing it, the kids are doing it, we're doing it together, we're learning together, which I think is wonderful. So there's 30 lessons on the online platform with videos and quiz questions and all kinds of downloadable materials and extra resources and special guest speakers and things like that. So it's an 80-hour program. Teachers get 80 hours of accredited CPD hours or CU hours if you're in the States. And there's live components every month where teachers can kind of ask any question, and we just have a chance to kind of network and meet each other. We also have Facebook group where teachers can ask questions, and I'm in there quite a lot answering or sharing resources. And then we do a few extra things, like we just did one about how do you teach mindfulness online to young children, right?
Yeah.
So things that are more topical. So it's a very inclusive program, and teachers have a year to get through the program. And they're still in the community afterwards, and they can still enjoy the new resources that we add. We're always updating and adding things to it. And then for schools that are maybe a bit bigger, have like 8 to 10 teachers, we would also include, a couple of 1 or 2 hour sessions with the group of teachers where they could ask more specific things about their school and how I can help them. And then I work with 4 or 5 schools maybe a year in person. So that's another option as well, going to do the face-to-face training and helping to kind of get things set up, and then having the online support in the background. So yeah, 2 different ways that we can work together.
That's great. And we will also put a link for the participants in the conference to have a look, and maybe even they could connect in the app, in the Headspace app, the community app, where they could write questions and leave some messages and reflect on what you've done. That is fantastic. I mean, I know you do a lot to promote mindfulness apart from your Mindfulness Curriculum, Helen.
Yeah.
You also have all these summits. So tell us a little bit more about that. That's so exciting.
Yeah. So I'm just so excited by what's happening in this world of mindfulness. So I started a preschool mindfulness summit about 4 years ago, and it was just popped in my head, and I just decided to do it. And it was so interesting and successful, and so I started running different summits. So I do 3 or 4 a year now. The preschool mindfulness happens every January, and I have a mindfulness in nature one coming up, and a preschool neuroscience, which Elmarie will be a guest on.
I'm very excited.
As well.
Thanks for inviting me.
No, can't wait to talk to you about it. And then I do one. This will be the 2nd year that I do with Chris Willard, who is a psychotherapist at Harvard, and we partnered up for a couple of different things. We do a mindful stories collection where we interview book authors about their mindful stories, but then we do a global mindfulness in education one, which really was one of the most interesting summits for me, because I'm quite a global person, and it was just so interesting to talk to people in 40 different countries and hear like what's happening. Governments are doing things, and whole school boards, and then some individual teachers are doing things, and it was just such an amazing, hopeful, inspiring thing to hear all these things that are happening around the world, and there's this big group of people that want to change how education is.
And that's exactly why we are hosting this conference, Helen. It is about showcasing people that it's possible to make a change. It's a movement, a global movement, where people look at the future with a positive view and looking at that you can actually make a change, even in the midst of what you sometimes feel are desperate times. just by making small changes in your own practice and the way you approach things, you can actually have a butterfly effect across not only your own school, but families and communities. And it's really great. And I've looked at your summit, and I've seen that you've interviewed some incredible gurus in the fields of emotional intelligence and positive psychology. So Helen, this has been fascinating, and I wondered if you're always busy with something new. You are always pushing the boundaries, not only of education, but you also support business entrepreneurs. Would you like to just give us a short explanation of what you do for entrepreneurs?
Sure. Yeah, so I think I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I can really see the intersection as well between kind of mindfulness and positive psychology and EI in our entrepreneurial adventures. So, for example, right now I'm running a course on how to stop self-sabotage. So we have about 55 people in there. And we're going through different strategies of what's stopping mostly entrepreneurs from putting themselves out there, from moving their business forward. So I work in that way with coaching and helping. Also help people learn how to do summits, which is what has been really beneficial for my business. So I have a Supercharger Summit plan and work with people either one-on-one or they can go through it on their own. But yeah, various levels of kind of business coaching, looking at our mindset really. And then I do all kinds of things.
I don't know where you get all the energy from, Helen, and if you ever sleep. But I think, as you said before, if you are mindful, if you think about how you spend your time, and as Martin Seliger said, if you are busy with something that's bigger than yourself, you find meaning. And if you have meaning, a feeling of meaning, feeling of, his PERMA model and feeling of achievement. And I mean, it gives you energy, right? It energizes you. Yeah. It makes you feel that you are leaving a positive footprint in the world. So many people focus so much on themselves. And if you start focusing outward and you think, how can I share my learning with others and contribute towards improving the world? You will find the time, and you will find that you as the flow starts, you are able to do more and more and more. Because it gives you a sense of enthusiasm and energy that you might not have known that you had. So, what are some of over the next 12 months, Helen? What's on the cards for you?
Yeah, so definitely I want to dive deeper into the neuroscience around different programs that I'm running and learn more in that area and see it's changing so quickly. So you kind of have to be on top of it to find out what's old science and new science. Another area that I think is very important and people are becoming much more aware is mindfulness and nature-based education. And I think, with the state of the planet and all the activism and things that have been happening, I think there's a real interest in how can we bring mindfulness because they do tie in so nicely. But I think there needs to be an action there, like not just connecting with nature or being aware of how beautiful it is, but what are we going to do as well to be kind to our planet, to have compassion for the planet and make it a better place. And then I think for me, the UN sustainability goals, I'm really focused on kind of reducing hunger, reducing poverty, bringing in higher levels of well-being and quality education. So those are the four that really resonate with me. I do a lot of work with groups in Cambodia because I used to live there, and I can see the impact that that's making. So when we run the summits, everyone who purchases a summit, we feed a child for a week at that school. In the Mindfulness curriculum, we give out gifts as people pass per certain lessons. So, if they get to lesson 5, we give 10 children a book that we have written about, called ABCs for Cambodia. That's really what drives me. That's the meaning, is supporting those children that don't have the same opportunities as many children in Western societies. So
Well,
I
that's
really want to
amazing.
make an impact that way.
And I think that again, it's being mindful of these goals. It's being really thinking. So how is this contributing? And I know for a fact, Helen, that you've mentioned in terms of your own practices, you pay the carbon tax when you're flying, and the participants. I don't know if you saw when you bought your ticket for this conference that there's a carbon calculator, and you can actually calculate the carbon gas that you've saved by not flying to this conference from wherever you were. So you can calculate that and then see actually what amount of money can be spent on saving rainforests or contributing to projects in the world.
Exactly.
And I think that's something in our conference that we're very mindful of, is that every single session, every single participant, through what they are saying and through what they are doing, and if it spreads, it really can help with the realization of the United Nations Sustainability Goals, which surprisingly so many people still don't know anything about. So we hope to raise more awareness. We hope that this is a movement for change. So in this conference app, the community app that is sponsored by Headspace, you can actually go and you can make a selfie video of 2 to 3 minutes where you can ask questions, where you can reflect. And when you do that, you are going to unlock goodie bags and stuff that the authors are giving you. So we really want to encourage you, because this is where you can connect, collaborate, ask your questions, create new networks. And we have 4 themes that spread across the country that connect the 5 days. The one is the importance of compassion and empathy, which seems to be a theme in every single interview that we've done. Another one is the importance of leadership. And I think mindful leadership is something that I would really like to explore further. Maybe with you, Helen, we could look into that. Another one is the impact of technology, because technology surely, we can do this because of technology. The advances in AI.
There has to be a boundary, right?
You have to think about the positives and the negatives, and what that is. And the last theme is inclusion, because it's such an important element, and it was part of why we started this conference and why you're doing your summits. I'm sure it is democratizing the conference experience, democratizing learning, making it accessible to people across the world. And for us, inclusion is a really, really important topic. So Helen, do you have a question for the audience that you want to maybe let them respond to in the conference or the community app?
Yes, I actually had 2 ideas. One, I was wondering, is anyone currently meditating or having a mindfulness practice? And if so, what difference has that made in your own life? And then also, I wanted to ask what people skills to very young children will that make a difference in the future, in our future leaders, in the big problems of the world, when we start teaching these children at maybe 3 or 4 years old, these type of skills.
That's wonderful. So we really hope that we will actually put these 2 questions out there for you. Please respond to this. I'm sure we are going to be very interested to see who's responding, and maybe that unlocks something special for you if you go into app and you share your views and respond to what other people are saying, because we are a group of like-minded people, and there's that synergy that comes from minds coming together and people sharing ideas and just feeling maybe that there are other people that are doing this as well, and that gives you a sense
Exactly.
of it validates your practice, or it gives you new ideas. So Helen, thank you so much. It was a fascinating interview, and I'm sure everybody's going to really benefit from your strategies. I'm sitting here holding my hands, and it makes me feel more calm and connected. And I'm definitely going to go and look for one of those balls,
Yeah,
that you've shown. And
very good.
thank you very, very much for your time and for being here with us and being in this community.
Oh, thank you so much, Elmarie, and everyone who's put together this amazing conference. You're reaching people all over the world and really changing the way that things are are done. And also, I love that it's focused on the future and what is going to happen and what do we need to think about and how can we personally change and how can we share that with others. So I'm really excited to watch the whole thing and really excited that I was asked to participate. So thanks again, Elmarie.
Thanks, Helen. And just as a last parting note, it's important to note to people that, you don't have to sit in front of the screen for 5 days. These sessions are available to you for a full year afterwards. So, you can choose which ones you want to be participating in. You can choose in your own, at leisure, when you want to see this or maybe rewatch this. So thank you very much for joining us. And Helen, we will put the links and books and things for the audience to access. And thank you very much for your time.